Well, hello, teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast, a welcoming space for studio music teachers who need to remember we are never alone in the important and sometimes exhausting work we do. My name is Christina Whitlock, and today I'm sharing a few brief reflections from my recent studio recital. We had a big surprise at this one, friends. You'll want to stick around to hear about it. But first, I need to say thank you to my Patreon community for supporting my work and doing their part to keep this show on the airwaves. Artists supporting artists is one of my very favorite things in life, and if you are curious about joining the Patreon community, head on over to christinawhitlock.com/Patreon or visit the link in today's show notes. And now, I bring you episode 167, Cheers to Perfection is Overrated. All right, so my studio recital was a week ago. Spoiler alert, it was great. In fact, many of my students have enthusiastically declared it was the best of all time. I attribute this to a few things. First of all, everyone played well. I often remind my students that I expect them to be prepared, not perfect. As is always the case, there were definitely some less than perfect performances, some strange tempo choices, but truly, students really were prepared for this event, and that makes all the difference, right? Secondly, my students chose a really nice program this year. And I say they chose it because when it comes to recital pieces for this spring event, I give my students carte blanche to choose anything they have played this year. I tell them life is too stressful this time of year to play music they don't want to play. So they can choose a current piece, they can revisit something from the fall, whatever. Any style, any level, if we have studied it this academic year, they can choose it. Well, I happen to think they outdid themselves this year. We had a little bit of everything. I'm sharing the program inside the Patreon community this week, so those of you who are members over there can check that out. I will just say that I loved the variety of pieces my students chose. We had many different styles and just a really well balanced program of lively and more mellow pieces. It was really fun on my part to decide how to program them in the most engaging order, etc. Moreover, I just felt like my students all chose pieces that truly represented them as pianists, which I kind of consider to be the biggest victory of all. Like, I really sat back at this recital and marveled at how many of them have developed a solid identity as a musician. That is so important, right? And so brave of them to show up so fully as themselves in front of an audience. Okay, third, you all want the big story, I'm sure. So I almost titled this episode Cheers to Knowing We've Never Seen It All, because, well, no matter how experienced we are, we have never seen it all, friends. So here's the thing. My entire recital progressed seamlessly. We took our studio photo right at 4:25. We started performances right at 4:30. If you've listened to other recital related episodes of this podcast, you already know I am obsessed with efficiency during a recital. So, everything's moving along like a well-oiled machine, right? My program was building toward our final performers, playing the most dramatic pieces, and you could feel the intensity building. And maybe also a smidge of restlessness because, hey, people start to get antsy for that recital snack spread. So, my final student gets up to present the first movement of Beethoven's Sonata Opus 10, number 1. He starts playing. He gets through the first 20 measures. I mean, there are these quiet little triplets, which then lead back into a big restatement of the opening theme, right? Well, when my student got to that forte, a piano string broke, you guys. It broke. One of the lower G strings snapped. Yes, of course, it had to be a G string. Ha! I want to offer the disclaimer that my student was not abusing the instrument. I have long contended that that particular piano is made of inferior material, and I believe I have proven my point. He did not do anything wrong or overly harsh at the instrument. Anyway, have you ever been to a recital where a piano string broke? I've seen a violin string break during a performance of George Crumb's Black Angels, but I've never been to a performance where a piano string breaks. Needless to say, my student was surprised. I should tell you now, this could not have happened to a better kid. This is a student who can roll with whatever life throws at him. He is a natural performer, has a great personality. I mean, plenty of my students would have been rattled by this, but he was not. So I jumped on stage to investigate real quick. And when I declared that he had popped a piano string, the audience burst into applause. So he stood up and took a bow. And then I literally looked at him and said, "Good luck with that." And he sat back down and started playing again. Had I been thinking more clearly, there is one thing I would have done differently in this situation. When the string broke, it ended up laying across other strings. So not only was the G toast, but now all of the bass notes came with extra percussion. It seriously sounded like a piece for prepared piano. I wish I would have thought to remedy that, but again, this was my first time experiencing this situation, and my brain was not prepared to problem solve that one. So the more he played, the more the audience laughed. I mean, these extra zings and pings were just so ridiculous. So when he finished his piece, he was met with an instant standing ovation from the entire audience. I mean, it was so great. Honestly, it was maybe the best moment I've ever experienced in a studio recital. It is the reason I have titled this episode Perfection is Overrated. I'm imagining what the ending of the recital would have been like had everything gone according to plan. Sure, it would have been an impressive ending to the recital, but what we got instead was just good old fashioned entertainment, friends. And that's really the point, right? Again, what do I expect of my students? Preparation, not perfection. And the purpose of being prepared is so you can roll with life's hiccups as they present themselves, right? I could not have planned a better life lesson for my students than that one. Also, I'm a big fan of the fact that there is nothing more powerful in life than a shared experience. That informs many of my philosophies on teaching, but it's really evident here. Our church sanctuary was full that day. So, those of us in that space shared a unique experience together that is never going to be recreated. We all laughed together and felt surprised together and cheered this student on together. It was a really incredible human experience. It just was. I feel like the whole thing was so special. Perfection is overrated, friends. It just is. So I hope you remember this story the next time you find yourself stressing over cultivating the perfect studio experience. Prior to this recital, if you would have asked me what my best case scenario was for that event, I would have said many things. But I would not have said, "Oh, I hope the piano strings break and completely destroy any sense of formality during our final performance." Nope, I could not have dreamed that one up myself. So, that is my best recital story to date. If you have a good one, by the way, feel free to send yours my way because I would love to hear it. You can leave a voicemail at the link in your podcast app, or you can always contact me at beyondmeasurepodcast@gmail.com. I have a new teacher friend of the week to feature, as well as a special announcement. But you know how this goes. First, we're going to toast. Find your nearest glass and raise it with me now. Teacher friends from all over the world. Today, we remember that laughter truly is the best medicine and maybe the best builder of community. I hope today's episode helped you realize that sometimes life works out even better and bigger than the best case scenarios we plan for ourselves. Who knew a broken piano string would teach us all so many of life's best lessons? Every single person in attendance that day is going to remember that moment. It also set my students up for some terrific conversations all week long. So, in the end, was the performance perfect? Definitely not. And yet, it was absolutely the best thing that could have happened. May we all remember that preparation is the goal, but perfection is not. Cheers to you as you pursue a life that is greater than perfect, my friends. Hear, hear. Okay, we're going to get to Teacher Friend of the Week in just 1 second, but first, I wanted to share with you something fun. For the first time ever, I am offering up a sale on all of my recorded resources for teachers. There are 3 of them, all of which have proven to be quite popular, and you can get any or all of them for 20% off this week only. Yeah, that only lasts through Friday, May 10th. So you'll have to get on this quickly. So the 3 resources I have are, first of all, called Making the Most of Your Chosen Method. And that is a resource created for teachers who find themselves questioning whether or not they are using the right method series. It includes my number 1 recommended exercise for pedagogy students of any age or experience level. And I do happen to think that will make an excellent summer project for any teacher. So you can check that out in the show notes for today's episode. I'm also offering up 20% off the Varsity Musicians Playbook. That is a recording of my most popular conference session. Any of you who find yourselves at odds with sports commitments from your students needs to go get their hands on that session and the accompanying resources, okay? And finally, this is a big one. I am offering 20% off the Studio Foundations course. This is my big course package. It's designed for any teacher who is looking for increased satisfaction and effectiveness in the teaching profession. It is not piano specific. It's designed for studio teachers of all instruments and voice types, but it basically covers 14 lessons that I was never taught in pedagogy class, but I wish I was. You can find all that information about those offerings in the show notes for today's episode. Those are found at christinawhitlock.com/episode 167. And now it's time for Teacher Friend of the Week. This week's TFOTW is my pal, Jackie Mrozek. Jackie happened to be my recital twin last week, holding her recital on the same day I did. Really, I know there were lots of you living the recital life on April 28th this year. Shout out to you. But anyway, Jackie is a Patreon member. She's a former consult client of mine, and she's a member of my Facebook group, which is called Teacher Friends of the Beyond Measure podcast. Shout out to that Facebook group, by the way, who is proving themselves to be the most sensitive and supportive Facebook community out there. In that group this week, Jackie shared how she decided to go all in on her printed recital program this year. And I thought this was interesting because we're living in an age where a lot of teachers are moving away from printed recital programs. But this is a great illustration of the fact that there is good to be found in every approach. So, about this recital program, Jackie wrote, I tried out something new at my recitals and made the programs into little booklets. It had summaries and photos of different programs and such throughout the year, and then a page dedicated to summer lessons. Every single student that I had yet to hear from registered online by that very evening. The next day, I was able to fill new group openings to my waitlist. So, my thoughts after my little experiment are the booklet program took way too much time and was pricey, but it also ended up being one of the best forms of marketing I have ever done. Well, Jackie, that was brilliant as always. We have to remember, first of all, some things are worth spending money on, but only you can decide what those things are. And secondly, it never hurts to try something out. Jackie doesn't have to make every recital program into a booklet from here on out, but at least this time, it proved to be a great call. So congrats to Jacqueline Rozek on being Teacher Friend of the Week. I'm going to leave you on that note today, my friends. I am wishing you the best as we all work to wrap up the school year on a high note. Ha! Don't forget, I am offering 20% off those recorded resources through Friday, May 10th. Simply enter code May20 at checkout. All of those details can be found at christinawhitlock.com/episode 167. Onward and upward toward remembering how overrated the notion of perfection truly is.